Lesson 10, DHCP. Now folks, this is a topic we did somewhat touch on previously in Lesson 9. Today we're just going to go a little bit deeper into it. So quick recap for those of you that don't know or that just maybe don't remember. DHCP, guys, stands for Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. Its purpose, if you don't know, is to automatically assign IP addresses and other network configuration. Most devices out there, guys, don't actually have an IP address. So as soon as you connect your device to a network, whether it be wired or wireless, your device asks for an IP address and it gets one from something called the DHCP. The DHCP issues it an IP address, and once it's got one, it uses that to, well, access resources on a network and to, of course, access the internet. Now, in case you don't remember, DHCP is also one of the most common services that you'll actually come across. Now, from a router perspective, folks, most routers have this built into them, and it's usually enabled by default. So if you don't want to use the one that's built into your router, you or somebody will have to actually log into that router, and you will have to go and turn it off. This is most likely due to you wanting to use an actual DHCP server. On that note, it can also be an actual server in a company. So usually in a medium to large size company, you will find DHCP is an actual role that you will go and add on a server. If you're wondering why people would want to go and do that if this is already built into the router, well guys, it's normally because it gives you way more functionality. It also gives you way more visibility, features. You know, generally there must be a reason, and that's the reasons. Now, as for the actual DHCP process, what exactly does it do? Now, imagine, guys, you've got a device that needs to connect to a network. This can be a tablet, a phone, a laptop, or a desktop. So for now, let's say it's a computer. It's a computer. You've got a computer, you're connecting it to the network. It does not have an IP address yet. So it needs to get one from where? The DHCP. Now, how this works is, as soon as you connect this machine to the network, once again, it does not matter if it's via cable or wireless, as soon as you connect, something called DHCP discover happens. That's step one. So step one is DHCP discover. You can see in the picture there at the bottom right. Now, what happens is your PC basically says, hello, is there anyone there? Is there a DHCP? And if there is one, it will reply and say, hello, yes, I'm here. How can I help you? Now, funny enough, it's not just the DHCP that's going to be receiving that communication or that broadcast, as they call it. Actually, everything on a network is going to be hearing that. If that doesn't make sense to you guys, imagine this. Me, you, and a whole bunch of people are sitting in the same room, and now I'm calling out your name in the room. Now, of course, you are hearing me call out your name, but everybody else in that room is also hearing me call out your name. Now, everybody else will obviously ignore that because they know I'm not talking to them. They know the name is not them. You, however, you'll reply because you know I'm talking to you. Now, it's very much the same concept. So when your PC says, hello, DHCP, are you out there? Everything on that network will get that broadcast, but unless they're the DHCP, they will drop that traffic. Now, step 2, guys, is the DHCP offer. DHCP will reply, and once again, everything will get that reply. So it's the same as you being in that room and you now replying to me. Everybody can hear you replying to me, but they will once again ignore it and they'll mind their own business. If they can hear it, they'll just drop that traffic because they know it's not for them. So DHCP will offer an IP address to your device. It doesn't give one, it offers one. It says, hey, how about this one? And it just randomly offers one. Step 3 is where your PC now has a look at it and it says, okay, you know what? I'll take that. And it requests that IP address. And then step 4 is where the DHCP acknowledges it and it actually issues it to your machine. So it's a 4-step process, guys. Believe it or not, this happens in a blink of an eye. You connect your device to the network, and within a matter of 1 or 2 seconds, all of this happens. Your machine does a bit of a broadcast, says, hello, is the DHCP. DHCP, if it's there, this is now if it's there, will say, yes, I'm here. Here's an IP address. How about this one? Your machine will have a look at it and say, okay, cool, I'll take it. And then the DHCP will acknowledge that and actually issue your machine with that IP address. And ta-da, you've got yourself an IP address. That is the 4-step process, folks, for DHCP. Now, there's a couple of terminologies and features and stuff you guys need to be aware of when we talk about DHCP. The first one I want to bring to your attention is the DHCP scope. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you've not. The scope, guys, is effectively the amount of IP addresses that's available in a DHCP. Yes, there's only a certain amount available. And it's also the range in which these IP addresses will be dished out. So you can go and configure the scope. You can do this both on the router and an actual server. And you can go and choose, you know what? I only want to have 100 IP addresses available. Only 100. Once it's up, it's up. So if device 101 and 102 and 103 tries to connect, it's just going to keep saying obtaining an IP address, and nothing is actually going to happen. You can think of these IP addresses as parkings at the mall. There's only a certain amount available, and once they're up, they're up. So if you go to the mall and you can't find a parking, guess what you're going to do? You're just probably going to be idling there in your car, double parking, driving up and down. But you can't actually go into the mall until you get yourself a parking. But if you were to see someone vacating their parking, well, guess what? You can take that parking, you can occupy their parking since they're no longer using it, and then you can go and do your business. IP addresses work the same way, guys. So once all the IP addresses have been taken by various devices, then, well, guess what? You're not going to get one, and you can't do what you need to do. You'll have to wait for one of the other 100 devices to disconnect from the network or to turn off that device. Once they turn off or disconnect, they release that IP address back to the DHCP scope, and that means something else like your device can now go and take it, and you can now go and use it. Now, the range also specifies from where to where. So if your IP address starts off 192.168.0, you can choose to start maybe from .50 and issue all the way to 150. So that would be your range. Another terminology I want you guys to know, and this is very important, is DHCP reservation. Works very much the same as making a reservation at a restaurant. So that means you've got guaranteed a table for yourself there. Sometimes you can even choose exactly which table you want because it's reserved for you. Now, IP addresses, as you guys probably know by now, they get randomly dished out to random devices, assuming, of course, there's an IP address available. Now, sometimes you want the exact same IP to always be dished out to the exact same device. So it will be dished out, but it's not going to be as random as you might think. It'll be specifically dished out to a specific device over and over and over. Why, though? Why would you want to reserve a specific IP for the same device? Now, there's many reasons, and I've seen quite a few over the years. One of the examples I can give you guys is perhaps for a printer. There's a printer in the office. Maybe today you're installing this printer, and it's now installed as .15 in terms of IP addresses. So 192.168.0.15. So today everything's hunky-dory. If you go and click on print, it's going to send that print job to .15, and it's going to find the printer at .15. So your document will print. Tomorrow is a different story, however. Tomorrow the printer might get a new IP address, a new random one. Tomorrow the printer might be .20. And when you click on print tomorrow, where do you think it's going to send that print job? To .15. Now, is there a printer at .15 tomorrow? No, it's at .20. So what we want to do is we want to reserve that IP so that it always issues the same IP to the same device. In this case, that .15 to the printer every day, over and over and over. So that if someone prints, the print job would actually still print. That's just one example out of many I can give you guys. The reservation is something you can go and do on a router, depending on the country you're from, you might pronounce this differently. So a lot of routers do allow you to go and do this, but not all. So that's one of the limitations you might encounter with a router, guys. If you go and do this on an actual server, you will always be able to do reservations. You'll always be able to go and do what we call an exclusion, coming up in just a second. You'll always be able to go and configure the leases and much, much more. On the routers, you can usually specify the scope. You can usually say the DHCP must be on or off. And sometimes if you're lucky, you can go and create a reservation. But if you're really, really lucky, you can go and do an exclusion. Most routers do not come with this functionality. So these are just some of the reasons as to why you might want to go and use a server as opposed to the DHCP that's actually built into your router. Anyway, like I just said, next up, DHCP exclusion. What is that? Well, it does exactly what it says, folks. It excludes. So in that range that you've specified in your scope now, so from where to where it needs to be issuing IP addresses and how many, maybe in that range, there's one or more IP addresses that you don't want to have issued. This is usually because these IP addresses have been statically assigned to something else already. A good example would be a server. So maybe there's one or more servers where you've statically assigned those IP addresses to those servers, which means we do not want those IP addresses to be dished out by the DHCP. Otherwise, you're going to have an IP address conflict and both devices will not work. They're both going to be kicked off the network, so to speak. We don't want that. So if you happen to have IP addresses that have been statically allocated to something, and if they happen to fall within your scope's range, always a good idea to go and exclude those one or more IP addresses, and that way the DHCP will make an exception of those specific IPs and simply just not dish them out. Then folks, DHCP lease. This is something that will happen regardless of whether you've got a DHCP in your router or your server. It's just a matter of do you have control over it or not. So on a server, you'll definitely have control over it. It is how long your IP address is valid for. Yep, I kid you not. Now, if you go and assign an IP address statically, a fixed IP, it'll always stay on an IP until you or somebody goes and changes it. But if you or a device gets an IP address from a DHCP, it expires. How long does it take to expire, you ask? Well, guys, that depends on the lease you've specified. By default, on servers, the lease is these days, I think, like 8 days. But most companies will go and change this to about 24 hours. So after 24 hours, that IP address that you have actually expires. Now, what does it do, though, when it expires? Well, let me put it this way, guys. Imagine this morning, maybe it's 8 o'clock this morning, you connect to the network. You get yourself an IP. This happens automatically. Great. Now you can do what you need to do. But if you leave your machine on during the night for more than 24 hours, and now the next morning it's 8 o'clock or past 8 o'clock the next morning, guess what? You still have that same IP, and now it would have expired if it's past the lease period. So if you go check what your IP address is, you'll see you can still see it. It will still be the same. But if you try and access resources now, it's just not going to work. The IP address has expired. Now, how you can fix this, which is one of the easiest ways and probably a funny way to go and do it, is just a good old-fashioned restart, guys. I'm sure you would have heard this IT joke in the past where we asked the user, have you tried turning it off and on again? It's funny because it actually does a lot of things in the background, guys. One of the things that happens in the background when you restart a machine is it releases the old IP and asks for a new one. Or at the very least, it renews the one you had. Either way, your IP is no longer expired. So restarting the machine is the quickest way to solve this issue. As soon as you've renewed your IP address or gotten yourself a new one, then the problem will go away. Alright folks, and then getting to DHCP that is specifically built into routers. Now, as I've said, DHCP is built into most routers, if not all these days. It is usually turned on by default. So if you don't want to use this, which is normally the case in a medium-sized business or a large enterprise environment, then you'll have to go and turn it off. But if you are in a home environment, because this is usually used in homes, or SOHOs, that's small office, home office environments. So if you're a small business or a home, you're most likely going to be making use of the DHCP that's built into your router. Lucky for you, it's turned on by default. And lucky for you, the configurations is correct by default. The only thing you might want to go and do is maybe just go and extend the scope or make it slightly smaller, but that's very unlikely that you might want to go and do that. Now, how exactly do we get to the DHCP of a router, guys? Well, you would first have to go and open your router, so you need to be on the same network, and you need to, of course, have access to this router, in other words, be authorized and all of that. So you start off by opening a web browser on your PC. It does not matter which web browser you use. You type in your router's IP address. Once you do that, it's going to bring you to a screen where you need to go and type in the username and password, if it has any. Normally, it does have one. Once you provide that, it's as simple as just looking for the DHCP functionality. Now, I cannot tell you, hey, it's going to be on the left, or hey, it's going to be on the top, because every router is different, guys. The different brands look different, different models look different, but generally, the good news here is it's very well organized, it's very user-friendly, it's labeled. So I can almost guarantee you somewhere on the left is going to be a menu, or somewhere on the top is going to be a menu, and one of the components or one of the tabs will be labeled as DHCP. Once you go click on that, you'll be able to see what DHCP functionality your router has and what options are available. If you guys are curious what this looks like, let me log into the router I'm on right now and show you the DHCP functionality there. Maybe that'll give you guys a better idea. So I'm going to open a web browser, switching over.
A few moments later.
Alright folks, here we are on that router of mine. You can see the top left here, I have entered the IP address for my router. So it really does not matter what browser you're using, you just type in the IP address of your respective router, and voila, it's going to take you to the login page. Some of you guys might call this a splash page for your router. Now it's as simple as typing in the username and password. So usually in most cases the username will be admin. The password will either be blank or it will also be the word admin. But in my case, I've obviously changed that. You should always go and change the default password. Something you'll learn a little bit later in the A+ course. And of course in the other courses as well. So let me just go and enter that in. And there we go. So here and there I'm going to obviously blur a couple of things out that you guys should not be seeing. Private information and what have yous. In my case, you can see I've got a bit of a navigation menu here on the left. You might also possibly see some sort of navigation menu on the left on yours. Or it might be in the top. It varies from router to router. In my case, you can see it's clearly labeled DHCP. So I'm going to go in there, and there you go. So I actually went and changed it yesterday from 100 to 199 because the 100 has been statically allocated to my PC. I was acting as a server for something, for a game of sorts that I was playing with my kids. You know, long story short. Anyway, so I did not want the IP address of 100 to be dished out, you know, to some sort of device in my household. So I decided to go and say, you know what, let me just start dishing out from 101 instead. I basically made my own exclusion of sorts because you can see here on the left, I do not have an exclusion function. I seem to have a reservation function on this router, but I don't see anything here of an exclusion. So if I want an exclusion, I'll have to do it in some other funky way like I did now, or I'll have to go and get myself an actual server or build myself an actual server. So you can see I can turn it on and off, very easy peasy. Here you can go and choose from where up until where it needs to be dishing out. So that is my scope in this case. My scope is from 101 all the way to 199. So there's about 98, 99 IP addresses that I've got. There's my default gateway. So that's the IP address of my router. And it's as simple as that. If I want to go and reserve an IP address, it seems like I've got that functionality here. And there's a couple of other settings here. Oh no, it's the same thing that I've got available as well. Now, you guys are probably wondering, okay, so what does this actually look like on a server? Now, on a server, we add this as a role. So by default, a server will not have this functionality. You need to first go and add a role to a server for it to have this functionality. But once you've added it and it's up and running, you'll have way more control. So let me show you on a server how this actually works. Switching over to a server. Alright folks, here we are on server. At the moment, you can see nothing has been installed yet. So normally here at the bottom, these little blocks or these little tiles will indicate what roles have been installed. Nothing has been installed yet. On the left here, you can also see what roles have been installed. Once again, nothing has been installed. This is a brand new server. So I'm going to go here to manage. That's one way to add a role. Or you can just go here where it says add roles and features. You can go there, add roles and features. There's the little wizard. Just go through the wizard. Next. Role-based or feature-based installation. Yes, I want to install a role. I'm going to go with the default once again. I'm installing this on this old server, server 2012, but it's the same for the newer servers, the exact same steps. Next. Here, you choose what role you want to install. So there's quite a few to go and choose from. So you can see other things like DNS, which is going to be the next lesson. It's also a role you can actually go and install. So I'm going to go and choose DHCP. Add all the features that goes along with it automatically. Yes, please. Gonna click on next. Is there any other features you would like to go and add? For me, no, not at this time. Next, next, install. Not too concerned about the installation process here because this is not a server course, guys. I just want to show you the difference between a DHCP on a router and a DHCP on a server, the functionality difference. You don't need to know how to go and install DHCP. If you do, that's great. But at A+ level, you absolutely do not need to know that. You just need to know what the difference is and what functionality is available on a server. So let's just give this a couple of seconds to quickly install. There we go. It's done. Gonna close. Now you will see here at the bottom it says DHCP is installed. And you'll see here on the left it says DHCP is installed. It's not ready yet though. It still needs to be configured. Just because it's installed does not mean it's going to work, guys. So you can see at the top there's a bit of a notification there. It says I need to complete the DHCP configuration. So you can either go in there, or you can go to tools, and you can go to your DHCP console. So let me go in here. I'm going to say commit. close. Gonna go to tools, DHCP. Up until now, there's nothing here that I've shown you guys that you need to know for the exam quite yet. I'll point it out if I see something that you guys need to know for the exam. So I'm going to click on DHCP. There's the console, very small. Let's make that nice and big. There's my server. Now in the beginning, guys, if you expand this, nothing's going to go on. We have not done anything yet. So most companies will work with what we call IP version 4. So I'm going to expand that. Absolutely nothing's going on here yet. You can see there's nothing that's been configured. So the first thing we need to do here, guys, is we are going to have to go and create a scope. Slightly more complicated than a router. On the router, you can see they already had that block that said from here to there, and you just have to go and type in the values. From here, on server, you need to actually go right-click here and say new scope. That's the option I need to go and choose. So, click on new scope. Next. Give it a name. Doesn't really matter. I'm just going to say test for now since this is a demo. Next. Now it's starting to look familiar like what we saw on that router earlier. So from where until where am I going to be issuing IPs? So let me go and type in a value here. Let's say from 100. And I'm going to stop at where? Let's say 199 perhaps. So it's about 99 give or take IP addresses. There you can see it's a class C. A full class C. So I've got the full class C to myself. Next, do you have any exclusions? You can always add them afterwards as well. So in that range of approximately 99 IP addresses, guys, is there any IP address in that range that we do not want to issue for whatever reason? Maybe we are statically assigned them to something like a server. If you do, you can go and add the IPs here. So if it's one IP, you just add it in twice. You type the same IP here twice. So let me show you how that's done. Let's say maybe it is 155. So I'm just going to add the IP address twice there. 155. And you do it like that. If you've got more than one IP, and if they don't follow one another, then you'll have to add them one by one. But if you have more than one IP and they happen to follow back to back on one another, then you can go and add the first IP here and the last one there. It's going to add that whole range for you. So that's quite nice. I'm going to click on next. Here we get to specify that lease we spoke of. Like I said earlier, by default, it's 8 days on a server. Most companies will reduce this to 1 day or 24 hours. I'm going to make this 1 day. Next. Do I want to configure this stuff now or later? I'm going to do that later because I just want to show you guys the basics. Next. Finito. And there we go. There is my scope. Now, at the moment, I don't know if you guys can see it. It's got a little white circle there with a little red arrow pointing downwards. That means this scope is not live. It has not been activated. You can think of this as a pew-pew, which has got a safety switch on it. And if the safety switch is on, you're not going to be able to do anything. But if the safety switch is off, it is live. So the moment the safety switch is on, so this is used for testing purposes and experimental purposes and what have you. But at the moment, it's not going to officially issue any IP addresses. If I click here on address pool, I can see my address pool. There it is. I can see any and all exceptions or exclusions. You can see I've only got the one here. Address leases. So if any of these IPs in that pool have been dished out, I can see which IP address to who and when it will expire. So you can already start seeing that we can see more via the server as compared to the DHCP in a router. Reservations. If you have any IPs that have been reserved, you can see them here. And if I want to make more, I can just go right click here, say new reservation. You can go give it a nice little name so you know for what this was. Specify the IP and the MAC address, so it basically binds the IP to that MAC address. It will always issue the same IP address to the same device, and it's based on MAC address because, well, MAC addresses don't change. If you want to make a new exclusion, you go here to address pool, right click on it, new exclusion, and you go and specify what the IP address is that you want to exclude, or IP addresses if it's a range. And that's it, guys. Easy peasy. It does go deeper than this, but this is once again not a server course. My goal here was to show you that it can be done on a server and that you will see more on a server and you'll have more functionality on a server as opposed to the DHCP that's built into your router. So this is why companies that are medium to large size will rather go and do it on a server as compared to, well, having it enabled on their router. Alright folks, I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you've learned something. Hopefully you know a little bit more about DHCP. If you've learned something, give the video a like. I would really appreciate that, and it shows me you've actually learned something. If you'd like to know when lesson 11 goes live, which is going to be about DNS, maybe consider subscribing. Otherwise, you might miss it. And then folks, I'm sure you know by now if you're watching video number 10, but if you don't know yet, the channel does have free practice questions. They're multiple choice. You can find them at the end of the playlist. It's already available. They're already live for both Core 1 and Core 2. In those questions, I go through each possible question with each possible answer, and I explain exactly what the question wants of you and exactly why the answer is correct or incorrect. I then also have performance-based questions, PBQs for short. These are basically simulations, so if you want a better idea as to what you can expect in the exam in terms of the practicals, because there will be practicals in the exam, check out my Patreon. There I cover the practical side of things. The link for that is in the video description down below, folks. And then if you want even more support, additional support, the channel does have a Discord server. It's called Free IT Training, where you'll find study groups, you can ask questions, there's discussions there, and if you want to go and post something on Reddit, we also have a Reddit, guys. It's called CompTIA_plus, so feel free to go and make a CompTIA related post there too if you want to. Alright folks, I will see you on lesson 11 of the CompTIA A+.